We're lucky tonight to have a front bench with deep diplomatic experience. Let's bring them back. Rob Giz, Gary Marr, and Gary Dewar. Rob, I'll start with you because we went to that meeting yesterday. We did our show from outside there. You've been around that table many times. Danielle Smith was there virtually. She participated in the meeting, but not thereafter. What did you make of the fact that sort of she stands alone at this moment?
Yeah, tough situation. I think first of all, though, it's good for the premiers to be getting together with the prime minister. It's good to see this full court press taking place with the U.S. because this is one of the most serious economic issues we're going to have to deal with over the next number of years. So from that perspective, we need to keep up the fight against these tariffs. We need to keep building on our relationships. I hope we need to do the same thing in Canada. There's a lot that always happens behind the scenes when it comes to these first ministers meetings. I know when I went to a lot of them, we didn't have a lot of unanimous decisions either, but there was work that always took place. So, I'm hoping something can be worked out amongst us, but it's good to see that the fight is still continuing. But I think we're in a different situation than we were 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we were dealing with a new Donald Trump, or 8 years ago, 4 years ago, new Donald Trump administration that really came in and had a lot of experience within governments, from the cabinet to a lot of the elected officials that he was listening to. This time coming in, it's a whole new ballgame. All that experience is gone. It's really mega all across the board. And I think that what we need to do is make sure that, quite frankly, that Donald Trump can have a win. He needs to be able to say that he won something, but we need to be able to do it in a way where Canada can also win as well.
The positioning, Gary Marr, of a lot of the premiers and the people around them yesterday was sort of like, well, we're willing to put the country's interest ahead of our province's own interest. And the prime minister today seemed to intimate that he didn't think, and some of those other premiers didn't think, Danielle Smith was doing that. Your view on that first, as someone who's coming to us from Alberta, but also on the prospect of what Rob just described, everyone essentially arriving eventually at the same point and presenting a truly united front.
I think that he makes a good point, and Gary Dewar would make this point as well, that if Canadians and Albertans had the opportunity that I've had to watch premiers working, they'd be impressed with two things. One, how much the premiers know, and two, how hard they work for their own province's interests. In this case, the idea of putting an embargo on energy exiting Canada, it's probably not even doable. I mean, we're moving 4.3 million barrels of oil a day to the United States, and we don't have the storage to put it somewhere else. And you can't just shut off the oil sands. It takes several months to do that. Number two, even if you could do it, would you be raising the ire of Americans against Canada as opposed to the president of the United States, who puts tariffs on those on that oil? So, I think that it was smart that the premier went to Mar-a-Lago. She's not expecting for the president-elect to say, we're taking the tariffs off, but she is starting to build the relationship. And I think that's really critically important. And moreover, I think that this is an issue that would disproportionately affect Alberta, which is one of the reasons why the premier has been reluctant to put her name on the communique. Other provinces have said, well, we're prepared to shut off electricity to the U.S., except that if you look at electricity exports, it's about $4 billion a year. Oil and gas is $150 billion a year. So it is a circumstance where the premier has been working actively with Premier Ford, Premier Moe, Premier Eby, and even Premier Eby said quite graciously, look, Danielle Smith is still part of Team Canada. Being a signatory onto a communique is not a precondition to being part of Team Canada. And he was quite gracious in saying, look, he understands why she did what she did, and she's standing up for a really important industry, not just to Alberta, but for all of Canada. And she's concerned about disproportionate impact on this one particular area that represents roughly 25% of the revenue and 25% of the GDP of the province of Alberta.
Yeah, and I do think, Gary Dewar, that the concern over a disproportionate impact is understandable and should be to most Canadians. I think the pushback came from, okay, even if it logistically doesn't make a ton of sense, even if there would be a lot of things that hampered the ability to put an export tax or to block energy exports, like by saying unequivocally we won't do that, it's like handing a card in negotiation over to Trump. That seemed to be what other premiers who had previously taken similar positions, like Premier Legault or Premier Moe in Saskatchewan, seemed to migrate through the day yesterday.
That's true. I think people want to keep their powder dry. We've got the appetizer with the president's speech on Monday, and then we'll probably have the main meal with all the presidential executive orders being signed that evening. There'll be, I think we should kind of keep our powder dry. I think it was good to have a good, honest discussion with the premiers and the prime minister. I would also say that I didn't like the prime minister taking a shot at the premier of Alberta today. He should point out that the federal government, the federal taxpayers, I think led by Chrystia Freeland and before that Rachel Notley in Alberta, finally built a pipeline to Tidewater. And that is actually a financial benefit, in this discussion with the United States, but also in terms of the price of oil we get in Alberta. And by definition, by the way, when the price of oil goes up $1, Alberta gets a third of it, the private company gets a third of it, and the federal government gets a third of it. So surely to goodness, the prime minister should be able to discuss these financial impacts of Alberta, taking in mind what they've invested in the pipeline to Tidewater that gives us a lot more leverage in terms of the U.S. market. But I would have liked us to have kept some of our shots across the bow between the prime minister and the premier. I would have liked to have seen them wait till Monday night, and then we're going to have a ton to manage on Monday night. But
it's a good.
You make a better decision if you know how much you got to manage.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I do want to ask about that because I think as the politics of it plays out, there are a lot of Canadians sitting at home worried about what Monday will bring to our economy and to their own livelihoods. Rob, how worried, if you were still premier, would you be about, as of 5 p.m. Monday, what the incoming president might do?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I guess you could say that if you look at Donald Trump this time, he seems a lot more emboldened than he has in the past. We've got a full court press on. We're still the #1 trading partner. We're still their best friend. There's so many people out there, politicians, businesses, out lobbying, doing their part to help out Team Canada, that I'm hoping that some leveler heads will prevail. And like I said, as long as Donald Trump's able to say one way or the other that he got some type of a victory, on the border, or more funding for the UN, or cut down on crime, something that he wants to hear, along with something economically that might not really affect us, but he can say that it does help them, then that could be, that would definitely be a win for us. But I would definitely expect something to be coming forward post-Monday.
Okay, I've got just about 30 seconds left for each of the Garys. Gary Mar, I'll start with you. Do you think there's a deal to be had?
Look, I think that we have to move forward on the idea that there will be a deal to be had. And I think we should go back to what happened in 1971 when Richard Nixon put in tariffs. They didn't last very long because the increase to the cost of living was significant inflationary pressures resulted in self-interest, resulting in self-correction. So imagine a farmer in North Dakota having to pay 25% more for the potash that comes from Saskatchewan. He's going to say, hey, I didn't sign up for this as part of the America First deal.
Gary Dewar, same question to you. I know you're still very plugged into everything there. Is there a deal to be had?
Not right away. I think Trump wants, as I said before, he wants to finance through tariffs his tax cuts that expire at the end of 2025. He doesn't want to see the taxes go up in 26. A lot of the business community in the United States is very concerned about tariffs and their impact on inflation, but also they talk out of both sides of their mouth right now hopefully not in a couple of weeks, about the tax cuts as well. So you can't have it all. And that's got to be part of the deal for us. And with Trump, you've always got to give him a bumper sticker. If you don't give him a bumper sticker, you don't get a deal. But there may have to be some pain for us and them to get there after Monday night, regrettably.
Okay, regrettably is the right word for it. All right, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate the discussion. Rob Giz, Gary Marr, and Gary Dewar.